Hey, how is everyone today? So, on today's podcast, I brought in my brother, Stephen. And I thought that it would be a good conversation. Obviously, I love having the conversation about money. Surprisingly, I can't get a lot of people to talk about money out in public. So, this is what we're going to do today. All things money, growing up, how we've been conditioned, how we used to think about money, how we've had to change our beliefs and identity around money, all of it. So, do you want to just give the listeners a brief overview about you,
Me?
who you are,
Sure,
yeah, business
sure.
wise, things of that
I,
sort?
before I do that, I want to know you're the only person in my life that calls me Steven. You know that, right?
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, everybody else calls me Steve. Why?
Mom and dad?
Yeah, Steve. Mom and dad call me Steve.
What do you want to be called?
Normally I go by Steve, but I don't mind Steven. I was just thought it was interesting as you're saying it. You're the only one that I know that actually calls me Steven. So
Mhm.
I didn't know if there was a reason for that in your own head or if that was just habit.
I think I've always called you Steven. I think maybe at
You
some
have,
point in
yeah.
time you went from Steven to Steve, maybe,
Yes. Yeah,
and you've
that's true.
always been Steven to me.
I'll be Steven for you as long as you want.
Steve or
Um,
Steve. Here we go. Let's go.
that's right. Steve or Steven. All right. So my background, I am, I guess, a entrepreneur. I'd say a lifelong entrepreneur. I've done business in some form for many, many years. Um, I don't know if you remember, but when I was in high school, I had that little computer consulting firm where I'd go set up people's networks. So I've always been interested in business, and as we both know, Dad was a small business owner too, which influenced us. And I think for me, it's just always been the freedom and the flexibility that comes with ownership once you get to a certain point. Um, I currently have been in the online slash e-commerce industry for call it 20 years. Um, I worked for a company in the late 90s called CyberCorp. They made day trading software, and we got bought by Schwab in 2000, so it was a super explosive growth, interesting business dynamic. And went back to finish my degree, and then, long story short, ended up somehow in Herbalife at the time, and learned how to sell the products online. And that was what got me into e-commerce. I took that process, leveraged it into other products and services, and now I have a variety of businesses in the industry. One is a supplement company called Primal Labs. Another one sells tactical products. Another one is a fulfillment and call center called logistics business, pick, pack, ship, outbound sales. And then the one we just opened last fall is a supplement manufacturing facility. So we kind of have all of those intertwined and in the mix currently.
How in the business are you currently?
Hmm. Define in the business. How mentally engaged am I, or how much do I do every day in the business?
More so mentally with the different businesses. Like I'm sure
I'm
at this
very,
point,
I'm
right?
very engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very engaged in the strategy, managing the leadership team, supporting them, all of that. But I don't actually do any job, so to say, meaning, salespeople sell. I don't do that. Finance people do finance. I don't do that. I'm strictly leadership, vision, and support. And then ultimately, um, business is about investing in the sense of where you're going to put your resources and assets to generate more return. And so I make those decisions. Are we going to invest in X or invest in Y, and providing the support to do that. So
Yeah.
day to day, not a lot. I'm in the office once to twice a week. Everything else is calls and Zoom and remote and all the things. So
Yeah. I was going to say support is what comes to mind. Like leadership to me feels like very much support of like what does my team and everyone need and supporting them. So, do you want to go back
correct.
to
Yes.
you want to go back to I think it's interesting. Number one, Stephen is Steve. Now I'm all in my head.
Call me
Steve,
Steven.
no, um, is a manifester. I am a generator. And I think for a long time before I found out about human design, I would look at my brother and I would be like, this guy can just go do all of the things. And I think that one of the ahas that I had was, oh, that's not actually how I'm supposed to do it. And so allowing ourselves, whether we are manifestors or generators or the other three types, to be who we actually are and then to work with that energy versus against it. So, growing up, we had experiences around money. And do you want to share? And I'll share my experience. Like, how did you view
Yeah.
money growing up with our parents? And then how did you actually change it and transform it?
Mm. Well, how did I view money growing up with our parents? It was very money was hard, money was scarce. And these are actually like not just, yes, they're beliefs, but they were our reality, as you know, at times,
Yep,
particularly with mom and dad's financial situations, dad's business experiences. And so I very much had a hard work, hard money, not easy, have to earn it, the world's out to take everything from you mindset. So it's this big, like, it's like Sisyphus sometimes pushing the rock up the hill over and over and over and over again. And, you get to the top and it rolls down and you got to do it all over again. So it was definitely modeled for us that money doesn't come easily. Money doesn't grow on trees. Everything has a cost. Yeah. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be prudent, but it was not an abundant mindset, I guess is the best way to say it. It was a lack mindset. And, mom and dad, I mean, to their credit, did the best that they could do. And I think we can both see that now on the other side, looking back on what we went through. Like, they did the best they could do at the time, and with
absolutely.
what they knew.
Yeah,
So, how did that change? I think it changed slowly over time. I don't know. The first thing that I remember, I listened to a lot of personal development. I kind of got started in it actually early on. I think I read Think and Grow Rich when I was in high school, and just different personal development books over the time. And when I was in Herbalife, I got turned on to Jim Rohn,
hmm,
who's super. He calls himself a business philosopher, but he's always had very good fundamental viewpoints on success and money and everything else. Nothing magical, just basic success concepts. And one of the things that he um, would say, and I think it was partly him and other people like Brian Tracy, et cetera, is that, like, if you don't believe that you deserve it, you're never going to get it. Like, it doesn't matter how hard you try. If you don't actually believe, or if you do get it, then you're going to lose it because you don't believe you deserve it. So, I mean, I I don't know. I don't know that there was a particular instance where it all changed. It
yeah,
was more of a situation of um um where I was like, oh, I can change my outlook and then change what I get. So I started like, oh, I do deserve this. And sometimes it was the ability, I couldn't think and see beyond, as in most people, like where you are. It's hard to see if you're on stair one, how you get to stair 50 if you can't see the 49 stairs in between. So I just started saying, no, I'm going to, I deserve more. I want to make a little bit more. I want to try this. And it was like an incremental step. Um, and so that was part of it. And then as I started hanging around more people, I started learning in a real way that actually it wasn't hard. Like, yes, it's effort. Yes, you have to put time and energy in. But the manifest, for lack of a better word, manifestation or the creation of those outcomes and experiences actually oftentimes come very easily. When everything's aligned, it just happens. And I'm actually experiencing that again now. I was telling one of my mentors that, you know what, I think my business has been a little stagnant because I've been a little stagnant. As soon as I realized early on that how I thought and felt about things actually really did affect it, I started trying to be more positive about things and expectant and understanding. And so in that example I'm saying now, we were talking earlier, I've decided to make a move. Well, since I've made that decision, there have been a lot of opportunities that have just shown up. Like, didn't go search them out, didn't go try to find them. They just fell in my lap. Now, would you call that easy? I'd say that's pretty easy. Like, and do they all work out? No, you got to work and, go through the process. But it's not like I was spending every hour of the day scrounging around for my next deal so I can pay my bills, if that makes sense. Um, so that was part of it. And then the other part was just getting to a point of understanding that, as you and I experienced, our experience was money disappears quickly. Like, it goes from good to not
Have it.
good really fast.
Yep.
Right. And so getting over and past that for me was also a big developmental process of like, oh, look, it's not all going to crash tomorrow. Could it? Yes. But likelihood? No. You're going to get warning signs. You're going to know what's happening. It's not just going to fall apart. And as long as you're paying attention and not ignoring it all, then you'll be okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, and then the other part, again, I mentioned a minute ago, was like seeing other people have it easy.
Yeah.
Also, Jim Rohn, one of his biggest sayings was your income is the average of your 5 closest friends. So I'm like, okay, I need 5 richer friends. So I started looking for people and hanging around people that were doing better than me. And I started learning from it and asking questions. And pretty soon I started getting better and making more money. So as an example, when I started in EO 10 years ago, I was the smallest business in the group, like $3 million in revenue that year. I think this year we'll probably end up at like 60 to 70 million. So it's been, and it's a large portion of that is because of being around them that think differently.
Yeah.
And having that influence. So
yeah.
does that answer the
Evolution.
question?
Yeah, evolution is the term that comes to mind, right? Like, I think when we're not just with money, right? With anything, we think we're going to go from 0 to 100, but it is just this like natural process, and it's not this linear process either, right? It's like
Right.
as we just continue to peel back layers and learn more about ourselves and see that our beliefs aren't necessarily true, or that they don't serve us very well. And you had said, around your energy, I wrote down energy flow or energy shifts, right? It's like when there's things that are stuck in our lives, most of the time, it's like a mirror, right? It's like, okay, where am I stuck? Where am I still continuing to choose the safe and the comfy, right? Versus, because I'm probably sure there probably was some internal dialogue that you had to do in order to get up and move, or ultimately will move states, and so that shifting the energy flow in order to allow other things. It's not just, it's like there's so much byproduct that comes from that, from when we are stuck. It's interesting that you said, I felt all of that in terms of like, money's hard, money doesn't grow on trees. But I never felt that anyone was out. You said something about, and I didn't write it down, like someone's out to get you, or that you used a specific.
The world's out to take it away.
There you go. The world is out to take it away. Did you truly believe that at some point in time, like that? If I have it, then
Oh yeah, I felt like that this it was this dynamic that, and we know we learned that from Dad, right? Like he had that perspective that obviously you have to work hard, and if you don't work hard, then you don't get to keep it. And so it was like this scarcity / competitive mindset, which is I have to be the number one hustler, runner, person ahead. And if I'm not, then somebody else is going to catch me and take me over. And then I'm going to not be number one anymore. And I'm not going to win because now I'm second, or they're going to take it all away from me. And then I learned, I was like, wait, at one point I was like, wait a second. Like, I think you said this before, and I love the analogy, which is like, or it was somebody else, I heard it, just because the sun shines on you doesn't mean it shines less on me. And you know what? You can be rich and I can be rich at the same time.
Yeah.
There's more than enough.
Yeah.
And it's a creative process, not it really is a creative process, not a struggle. And
Yeah.
if you're struggling, then something's not right.
Yeah. It's fascinating because I don't know if we've ever really had these conversations. Like we've talked about money before, but we haven't. And I'm curious if it was like you were older and so you got to see that competitive. Now I see that now. Like I see how sometimes that is the lens that he might see the world through. And also I never felt I never felt like if I had it, someone else couldn't have it, or if someone else had it, I couldn't have it. It wasn't ever um, a taking away. And so it's just fascinating how even though we might have had the circumstances were the same, right? The lens or how our perception or our views or what we took away from that experience is different. Um, do you want to share a little bit because you made the comment about like, oh, if I have it, it comes quickly and it can come as quickly and it leave as quickly as it came. So when you mentioned about working at Cybercorp, you were what,
Mhm.
20, 23,
Started at
20?
19. I started at 19.
Okay. And then they went public when you were?
They didn't go public. They got bought by Schwab,
Oh, sorry. Okay.
right? And I had quite a bit of stock options. I don't know, $3.5 million worth of stock options.
Yeah.
And, it was that experience. It was like I had it, and then 3 years, 4 years later, I didn't. And it wasn't, I've told this story so many times. It wasn't because I was flippant or irresponsible or went and bought 15 Lamborghinis and a
Yeah.
jet and all the other stuff and spent it. I didn't. I didn't spend it. I just didn't know how to keep it. I didn't know how to hold on to it. And my mindset was when the market corrected again, I don't know if you remember, but the 90s was a bull market the whole decade, nonstop, up, up, up. That's all I ever saw. So the 2000 correction was my first ever like real like, oh, it doesn't always go up.
Yeah.
Well, when you don't know what to do, when it doesn't go what you're used to it doing, then you're a little bit, inexperienced. And so there was a correction, and my viewpoint, immature at the time, was, oh, I have to make it all back now. I have to make it all back fast. If it
Mm.
goes back from 3 million to 2.5, then part of my head wasn't focused on the time out, dummy. You still got 2.5. Why don't you sit on that and let's grow that? As opposed to, oh no, I need that 1 million I lost back now.
Like
And so
focusing
then you
on what we
make
lost versus on what we're going to gain kind of thing.
what we have.
Yep.
Yep. And so, in that dynamic and that mindset and focus, you make very different decisions
Yeah.
because it's driven by anxiety and need, not by smart thinking. And the reason I got in that whole situation was because the short term and long term capital gains difference between holding the position for the year, because I couldn't, the long term capital gains didn't kick in until we got purchased, because I had options, not actual stock. So it kicked in, and so had to wait a year. It was $600,000, like between 20 to 40%, right? And I was like, okay, well, that seems like worth waiting for a year. Well, I also bought more Schwab stock on margin, so I increased my concentration. I was already concentrated; I was even more concentrated. And then we had the market return. And honestly, for like 3, 4 months, I thought I was a genius. I had made like, I don't know, 100 grand or 150 grand on the position. And it was like, oh, you do know what you're doing. And then it didn't go up anymore. And then you're out of your depth and you're like, well, what do I do now? How do I deal with that? What's the playbook here? I didn't know. And so that's where it got dicey and I made bad choices. And yeah, so back to the point, yes, it came and then it left. And I have always had this. It's taken a long time to get rid of the fear of losing everything.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of work like with therapists and everything. It's really not the losing of the money. It's in a real way, the child inside of me thinks that if I do lose it, I'm going to be back in that house with green carpet, 800 square feet, where we were all crammed together with one bathroom and two toilets, living in the country and broke, right? And
It's
broke,
really the
and
emotion,
be
right?
there forever.
It's
Yes,
the
it's the emotion.
emotion, right? That's what we're
Yeah,
really trying to avoid is we think it's like going to be the circumstance, which that circumstance elicits very strong emotions in our body, right? Like
of
we
course.
remember
Yeah,
that, we feel what that felt like. And what is it really like? I had to sit with, okay, I would feel total embarrassment, I would feel complete disappointment, and I would feel like a failure. I mean, those
yeah,
were basically, like when we're really looking at like why are we so scared, it's really like those, like you said, all of the inner child stuff, all of the little kid that hasn't really been processed, right? um and you said something around like, I don't know if you use the word fear of, you know with your stock options and all of the money that you had and that what was going south, but it's like focusing on what we're going to lose versus what we're going to, or what we have, or what we're going to create, and like acting from that emotion. um
yes,
and I mean, and this is, and I say this all the time, like our parents, everyone's parents, right, did the best with what they had, right? Like where their consciousness was. And our kids will have more evolved consciousness than where we are right now, right? Like we
right.
are just
Yep.
continuing to evolve and to grow faster and faster and faster. And also, our grandparents literally lived through the Great Depression. So like
Mhm.
that emotion of fear, that emotion of survival, like is legit, right? And so having it in your DNA, being passed down until you're able to look at it and transcend it, um,
Yes,
like it's real, right? Like we did, I
it
mean,
is real.
back in the 1940s, you did have to work hard, right? Like you didn't use a lot, there wasn't a lot
I
of
mean,
cerebral,
yeah, less so, but I
yeah,
will say, I mean, yes, the
but then you
titans of industry back then were different. Maybe it was
yes,
steel and cotton and railroads and
yep,
stuff like that, as opposed to internet and
yep,
tech and all the things. But
yep.
there's a lot of people that got very rich in the Great Depression,
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I
right?
was gonna be like,
And
all the Rockefellers. Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
why did they get rich? Because it's an opportunity,
Yeah.
not a struggle. Like it does create opportunity. And what you're saying is true. Like we modeled what we were taught, and our parents modeled what they were taught. And somebody has to at some point say, you know what? It doesn't have to be this way. Like it
Yeah.
could be a different way.
Yep.
But how many times have we run across people that are like, oh no, I can't do it. That's just the way it is. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like, of course you can if
Yeah.
you want to,
Yeah.
but as we both know, that when somebody sees somebody else do something that they think they can't do, it now brings into question, is that really true? Right? Like
Well, I
if
think it's
if
like
I'm
an
telling
attack on
you,
your ego, right? Like I think it really
of
starts
course,
to
that's what I'm
you.
saying. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. If
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, you can't go work for yourself and be a coach, and you're like, yes, I can, watch. And you
Yeah.
go do it, and I'm like, oh well shit, that's what I thought was true. Now that's not true. What does that say about me? Clearly
Yep.
it's not that it can't be done, it's just that I can't do it. So or think I can't do it. So
Not doing it. Yeah. Not doing it.
right.
So what would you say to the younger Stephen or Steve that experienced that? Like, have you forgiven yourself? Have you like
Oh
such,
yeah. Oh yeah.
you
Oh
just
yeah.
used a strong word, like you said, you dummy. And I'm like, my heart hurt a little bit for like,
Oh,
you
I didn't
know,
even hear myself say it. Yeah.
yeah,
The yes, I have, because now being on the other side of it, I can look back and see the beauty of it.
yeah,
And the I actually the silver lining for me is I became a really freaking strong person, like in a
yeah,
real way.
yeah,
To lose that and to have to rebuild it took
yeah,
some guts. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but like it my dad's always said, he's like, there's a lot of people that would just given up, like
yeah,
just, oh well.
yeah,
And so I'm a much stronger person. And I remember there were times where it has created an anchor point. And Jim Rohn used to say, Look, if you have 2 million and you lose one, yeah, you lost a million, but you still got one. If you have
Mhm.
two and you lose two, you lose everything, right? And it's a different, and there was an experience in business, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago where some of the employees knew where our cameras were and broke into the office and stole a bunch of computers and basically, I don't know, it was 15 or $20,000 worth of loss. And my finance person at the time was not understanding why I wasn't freaking out. And I'm like, because this is nothing compared to what I've dealt with. It's so small. It's going to be just fine. We'll keep going. So that has been the payoff for me,
Yeah.
ultimately, which is like, oh, look, it could have been like that. And even now, I look back on it and see that even then, it didn't have to be painful. It didn't have to be hard. But I didn't know in the minute
Yeah.
that it didn't have to be.
Yeah.
But that's so.
And I
So what I
think
would
what
tell
it
my younger
also,
self is,
mm,
sorry,
no, go ahead.
what I tell my younger self is that one, you're going to get there.
Mm.
You have a fear that it's an all or nothing, and it's not that way. You will get there. In fact, you'll get there faster if you'll just relax and have fun
I was gonna say, if you'll
and
just
do what
calm down
makes
a
you.
bit. Yeah.
Just take a chill pill. Just chill out for a little bit. That one, and two, that somebody has already solved all your problems. You know, like someone's already dealt with all this. This is not a new problem. Yes, and certain technologies and forefront thinking ideas and things are different, but for the most part, there's some expert out there that can solve any issue that I have. And I was sitting there thinking I had to solve it all. Well, what am I going to do now? I don't know. I mean, I have a mentor, CEO, coach at this point. He's run multi-billion-dollar businesses. There's no question I've asked him that he doesn't have an answer for. Like, this is what you do. And I'm like, okay, I'll go do that. And it's shaved off so much of my learning curve. And that's just an example now. And whatever it is, like whether you want to be fit and lean and healthy or strong, or you want to run a marathon, want to climb mountains, like any people already do it. You just got to
Yeah.
go talk to them. So
Yeah.
that's the other part I'd say is like, look, you don't have to figure it out. It's the answers are there. Just go find who knows how to do it.
And I think what it also teaches is like, you already said resiliency, but it's like that generation of income is like, you can do it once, you can do it again and again and again and
Yes,
again, right?
yes,
Like
yes,
that
yes.
that belief of like, if you lose it all today, it's not a problem. I'll just recreate it again. May take me a little bit of time, maybe it, whatever it might be, but like that true belief of like, I generate my wealth and my income, it does not happen outside of me, which is not what I think the vast majority of the Western culture is taught.
Agreed. And I think that's also where I particularly got the idea of it being taken away because dad sometimes had a victim mentality about, oh, it happened to me. Oh,
Yeah.
they did it. Oh,
Yeah.
they took my money.
Yeah.
Oh, they raised the rent. Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Which that part's true. That did happen.
Yeah.
But it's not what it is. It's how you react to it, right? Okay, great. What's the? Somebody told me the other day. I want to start using it. I haven't yet, but Jocko Willink, I think he has a saying when somebody says blah 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 this that he's like good, and if it's good news he says good, and if it's bad news he says good.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it? Like,
Yeah.
and so it's just a different reaction and an energy, and I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah. It's totally our perspective. And I think that, we can look at it. I think some of us want to look at it and be like, okay, well, I don't want to be a victim. And so we shy away from like the actual feeling of it, right? It's like we can actually feel what needs to be felt. Like that was probably really tough, right? To have 3 kids, to not know where you're going to generate your income and all of that
Of
stress,
course,
right?
of
And
course.
my responsibility is, where did I co create this? Where did I have a part in this? And how do I want to, make
That's
changes
yeah,
in my thinking?
yeah.
And
But that's the hardest thing that I think people take to grasp
what
because
part? The
that you
responsibility?
actually, yes,
Mm.
regardless of what it is, you
Yeah.
have some input and responsibility. And for you to say, I had no control, well, then you have no
Power.
agency either.
Yeah.
Now, power. You're giving all the power away. Oh, it's happened to me, outside of me. And I've had some things, you and I've talked about some things in my personal life that happened recently. And in the beginning, I was like, man, it happened to me. And then a friend of mine said, well, this is me. Which partner did you choose? There is something you have done that played into that. Now, maybe the other person made some choices and did some things,
Yeah.
but you had a piece of it. And so when you do that, you're like, oh shit. Like I think that's the biggest one because then you're accepting the good and the bad. And a lot of times people don't want to be able to say, oh, look, I actually created some bad things in my life. It's easy to say, oh, yeah, I created the good stuff, but to say, oh, yeah, I created some bad stuff too, well, yeah, that's a little harder to deal with. But once you kind of get there, then you're like, oh, yeah, I actually do create this. I make it. I get to choose how it's going to be. And I can choose for it to be good or I can choose for it to not be good.
And I think like anything, I mean, one thing I've really had to two things to this. One, we're always co-creating, right? With someone
Yeah.
else, with the universe, God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it, right? We're co-creating. And I think that I really had to reframe and change the way that I look because I think we want to look at things as good or bad, right? And it just that's just judgment, right? It just is, right? And how do we want to use it to allow us to grow and to evolve? And if we can look at it from a compassionate lens, right? Versus it's bad, you did this, right? That feels very like
Right.
you
Judgmental.
shouldn't have, right? Versus like, of
Yeah.
course, this is what happened because, this is what I was thinking and believing at that time. So, um, when you think about, you've mentioned like, fear, anxiety was some of the emotions that you used to have around money. What would you say are probably the top three emotions that you feel now?
Now,
Now.
now, joy, gratefulness,
Hmm.
Um, desire, probably. I don't know. Those just come to mind. I don't
Yeah.
know if those are the top three, but
Yeah.
it's definitely positive space. I don't, every now and then, I'll get to like, oh, what about them? Then I'm like, you know what? And here's the other thing going back to what I was saying before is that as you as a person get more experience, you get more confidence.
Yeah.
And I've run into situations where I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? And then I'm like, well, time out. You've solved every problem up to now. You'll solve this one too. You'll figure it out. Calm down. Just figure it out. Whether you need to ask somebody or do it or whatever. And so that gives you that calmness about it. So it's not, yeah. What did I say? Desire, joy, and gratefulness. I'm very grateful to
Yeah.
have all the experiences that I've had.
Yeah.
And I'd say another one is generous. Like I enjoy being able to help other people in a variety of ways, not just money, but
Yeah.
time, expertise, and everything else. And quite honestly, I think that's probably been one of the biggest reasons that I have been successful because I've always been generous. I've always been willing to help because there's more than enough. That's ultimately, I think, the answer to the original question of when did you flip? It was when I finally figured out that the universe has more than enough.
Mhm.
And when you know that it has more than enough, you're not worried about getting your share anymore. You just go get, and I know it's a woo woo energetic angle to it.
I'm all
And
towards
not,
that. That's how the world
I know,
works.
I know. And not just specific business, but it is. And I was like, oh, there is more than enough. And so I feel very abundant now and
and
grateful.
and when we have more than enough, when we believe, I shouldn't say have, when we believe we have more than enough, however many zeros are behind, right? Because
Right.
you made a comment, you're like, oh no, what about now? It's like you probably have more zeros in your bank account now than you used to have 10, 15
I
years
do.
ago. And your
Yep.
brain still, right? Like this is the thing that we think, right? Oh, if we just have more zeros in our bank account, then our brain won't freak out. It's always going to freak out, no matter what it is,
Right.
right?
Just
Um,
bigger problem.
yeah.
What's that
Um,
song? Mo money, mo problems.
I don't think it's bigger problems. I think it's just different problems. Don't you think it's different
Of course.
problems?
Oh, yes and no. Meaning, if you make $50,000 a year and own a $150,000 house, you've got whatever payment a month that is.
Yeah.
If you get into financial issues, you're going to
Yeah.
have that payment to deal with. If you own $1.5 million house and you make, you know, 250,000 a year, it's the same problem. It's a financial problem. You can't pay your house payment, but it is bigger because the numbers are bigger. Or if you do more investment or more. So I think that part. But other than that, the problems are all kind of the same. Like the scale of the problem changes, but the problem itself is the same kind of problem.
That's fascinating because I don't necessarily know if I like I think we just think about it differently. You can think about it differently. Like there's just more zeros to it, but whether we think that it's bigger, then that is what creates that, like for me, like in my body when I'm saying that right now, like if I think that's bigger, like oh my gosh, $1 million versus a $200,000 house, and the fear that I put to that versus like it's just a million or it's
So
250. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
I'm not talking about the energetic difference. Yes, you can still have in those examples, you can have the more expensive house make more money and still be just as anxious about it as you
yeah,
have no money.
yeah.
I'm not talking about the anxiety. I'm talking in a real way on a financial statement. The impact and the scale is bigger. If you make a mistake on a $100,000 deal, it's $100,000 deal. If you make a mistake on $100 million deal, it's it's a bigger mistake. That's what I mean, bigger in
Mm.
terms of not
It's just
necessarily,
more
but there's
money.
people.
It's just more
Correct.
money.
That's what I'm saying. It's more,
All
but
you're
the
saying is it's
energy
just more
around it,
money.
when you
Yeah.
get to, it's just more money. When you get to the point where it doesn't really matter, then it does. That's actually where you start doing the bigger things because you're like, oh, it is the same. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. At what point did you realize that the money was never going to bring you the joy? Well, first of all, let me ask this. Did you believe at some point in time that there was a certain dollar amount that was going to bring you the joy and the fulfillment that you were searching for?
Yes. At one point, I thought you get to a certain number, you hit that number, and then everything's better. Then you get to quit. Thank you. I'm done. I win. Bye.
Well, I have this theory. I think that we high achievers change grades to just money, right? Like it's like grades in high school and college, and then we just
Of
flip it
course.
to
Yeah.
money when it comes time for it. You know,
Yes.
it's just like,
Yes.
and so we like,
So yeah, I think that's two things. One, there is a real like part of me is just how I am. You would call me a manifester earlier. I just like challenges and doing things and figuring things out and building stuff. And like when I get to the next level, then I know there's another level. But choosing to go to the next level or not choosing to go to it now is less about how much money I'm making and more about am I enjoying it? Do I want that? Do I want to do that? And why do
like
I want to do
evolving.
that? Well, because I
Yeah.
want because I want to,
Yeah.
not because I have to, not because I need to, because I want to.
Yeah.
And that's a different energy. And then that's where you're not. Yeah. I thought at one point, and I ended up. I don't remember, it was probably 10 years ago. I had $500,000 in cash in the account. And everything was, I had no employees. It was all online and had a few partners and I was doing okay. And I was like, huh, well, now what? Now what am I going to do? Now I'm actually okay for a little while. What do I need to do? And you know what I did? I did the wrong thing. My little brain was like, aha, you have lost the lion. The lion's not chasing you anymore. So let's go create another lion and let's make it bigger and let's make it scarier so that we have to run longer. So we have to go do more. So that's what I did.
Are you
And,
saying,
and
well, I wrote down we're so conditioned for struggle or like until we
yes,
break free from that. Is that what you're saying by the lion?
yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I've always
Yeah.
had this we were talking about from dad that there's this anxiety of like, oh, if
Yeah.
I don't run, the
Yeah.
lion's going to eat me and then it's all going to be over. So I got to run. So go, 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 go. And
Yeah.
that's
So
incredibly
let me create some
stressful.
more problems, right? It's like people might call it like
Exactly.
self-sabotage, right? But it's like we our
Yeah.
nervous systems aren't used to like, oh, this is so fun and this is so
Hmm.
easy and I have plenty of money and there's no problems.
Right.
It's like we're always going to create something
So,
because yeah.
right. So I did so I went and created the biz because I wanted to feel safe because I feel safe. So I go get some money. I feel safer, not safe, but safer. Right.
Yeah.
And then I'm realizing like, oh, I don't think I feel safe enough. I need some more. And I talked with one of my therapists, and I was like, okay, Steve, the thing you do is go build a bigger business with more complexity, more variables, and more things involved that when they don't go wrong, actually make you feel less safe, not more safe. So then you go build an even bigger, but the solution's a bigger business. So now I make it bigger and add another zero to it. And guess what? I've got more variables, more things, and then I'm still not safe. So I finally got to a point, I was like, oh, all I've been doing is this stupid like loop forever of like, oh, okay, it needs to be bigger. Why does it need to be bigger? Because I don't feel safe. Well, make it bigger again. Oh, now I'm still not safe. And it's not the business, it's the internal work about how do I feel safe? Like how do I just feel okay? It's okay.
Yeah. And I don't think that that is something that, do you think that that's something that's really taught? I know it's not taught in schools. I think a lot of parents don't teach that. Um, but like in your circles, do you think that that is something that is actually talked about? Because I don't, I think that we have been conditioned or um, to believe and or we see like we like fantasize, right? Like that someone has XYZ and they feel okay versus like the true authentic like no, like there are billionaires that are like fucking terrified. Um
Mm-hmm.
I think when Jeff Bezos and his wife got divorced and she's just started giving like I don't know, three
Mm-hmm.
quarters of it away, he was like I have a really hard time letting go of it because I've worked air quotes so hard for it. And I just was like, "Oh, isn't that interesting?" So, I don't know, what's your take on, do you think that that's not really a talked about thing, like the thing is never going to make you feel safe?
I agree 100%. It's not the thing. It never is the thing. Um, and I think the other part is that, excuse me, I think the other part is that parents are not taught that their whole job actually is to make kids feel safe and loved. Like that's it. Like it's okay. You're loved. You're okay. Period. Like that's it. Like yes, other things quote matter, but not as much as that. There's more I'll call it trauma and effects on people's lives because that doesn't happen than anything else, I think, is
Yeah.
just being you're okay. You
Yeah.
don't need to do anything different. You're okay.
Yeah.
And when
But
you yeah, so
in your circles, do you feel like that other people have experienced the same thing?
no. Oh
You don't
yes, I definitely think to like Brent was one of my therapists, and he's like, entrepreneurs are a very, very weird, different person. Their wiring is very different. They're not. Somebody who grows up in a safe, secure household where mom and dad make plenty of money and there's no scarcity and there's no need for anything, they're not going to have a desire to go build a business to make a ton of money. They don't need it. Now, the drive might be different. Maybe they want to work for themselves and be free, but it ain't money driven because that's not the problem.
Yep.
And your nephew is that situation right now, and I have worked with him on both sides. On part of me and him is like, oh, I need a reason to do something. I'm like, okay, that's true, you do, but external motivation is not going to get you as far as internal motivation. It only gets you as far until the external motivation stops motivating you, poking, prodding, sticking, hurting, getting you to do something. And you got to figure out what your carrot is. And once you know what your carrot is, then you just go for it.
This is where I think that we use that word motivation interchangeably, but I don't believe that that's really motivation, right? Like, I think that that is like you were talking about running from the lion, or like that's like
Right.
ego driven versus like what is our heart's desire. And I think this is what I have had to learn from like being a generator is like, what is the shit that lights me up? That's the stuff that we have to do. And then the byproduct is money, right? Like money is like
Correct.
a task,
Correct.
it is a
Yes.
goal, it is not a heart's desire, right? Like
Yep. So I'll give you an example. Yeah, you're 100% right. When I started online, I joke, but it was like I want to make money in my underwear, right? I don't want to go to an office. I don't want to be part of the day to day. I don't want to go in the grind. I don't want to be on the rat race. I want to do it my own way. And when I focused on that, I achieved it.
Yeah.
And I was happy with it until we got mentally to that point of like, uh-oh, now something's wrong because I'm not scared any as scared. Now I need to go be scared again and go do more. And I didn't come about it from a um, um, what was I saying? From a standpoint of passion and joy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I focused on what made me happy, which was not interacting with the rest of the world every day and finding a way to make money on my own, I did well. So then I went in and changed the script. Okay, now I need to go have an office and employees. And now all of a sudden, at some point, I'm like, I really don't like this, but I got to keep going, keep going, keep going. And so then I got another mentor, Mark. So I call him my entrepreneurial coach. Um, and he's like, Steve, like, why don't you get back to doing what you want to do instead of what you think you have to do?
Mm.
Like, you created a situation to trap yourself to feel like you're busy and important and you hate it. Why are you doing that? So as I started thinking about it again, I was like, oh, because the magic was in the passion and creating a scenario that made me happy. That was the magic, not all the other stuff. And I've been talking with other people about this, which is like, and it plays into relational and personal life too. Like when you're looking for a partner, not a business, a life partner. If you haven't made, or let's say you have, I think you should have. I'm learning you should have your list of deal breakers and things you want and things you don't want and things that you have to have and if you don't have, and vice versa. If you're engaging with someone and they're not meeting that list, then why are you even wasting time? Because they're never going to be a partner, right? And in business, it's the same way. You've heard the stories of people saying, "Oh man, my business was in shambles until I had got sent to the hospital for 6 months, and I had to figure out how to run my business in 2 hours a day." All of a sudden, they figure it out in 2 hours a day, and the business runs. Then they get out. What do they want to do? Like go back and work 10 hours a day? No, it worked 2 hours a day because you did it based on that dynamic. You put some boundaries in place, you put some restrictions on what you will and you won't do, and then you make choices based on that, as opposed to I'll do anything and everything I have to get what I want, which is what I've done. And
Mm.
anything and everything means saying yes to a lot of things that you should be saying no to. And I am learning in my dear 46 years of age that sometimes no is much better than yes.
Mm.
So
Yes. Yeah, because here we go back to conditioning, right? We do it for the love. We do it for the approval. We do it for
right.
that little kid in us, right? Versus I'm saying no to everything that I don't want to do. Because I just wrote down, did you ever ask yourself, what do you want? And then you were talking about your entrepreneurial coach that asked you, like, what do you actually want? Versus, like, we think we want, the ego mind thinks we want, right? Versus, what does our heart want? And you mentioned, you didn't say these exact words, but like moving away from something is very different energy than moving towards something, right? Like, I don't want to be in
Correct.
an office. I don't want to be with those people is very different than I want to do this to see what I'm capable of because I love doing this because it's so fun to
Yep.
see what I'm, made of. And I think that there comes a point, you tell me what your thoughts are, but there comes a point, obviously, when all your needs are met, you've got plenty of money and all of that, and you said it, like, you love to give, like, and your therapist was talking about, like, you don't go into entrepreneurial stuff, um or people that have had healthy, money histories don't go into it from the fact of making money. They do it because he didn't say these words, right, but like they do it for the love of giving and serving and having
Or
fun.
self-exploration, of
Yeah.
course, yes. All
Yeah.
positive, well, I'll call it positive, whether
Yeah.
you want to use motivation or not, but they're positive influencers as opposed to negative influencers, yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely towards versus away, towards instead of away from.
Yeah. Why do you think that most people do you feel a lot of people talk about money or don't talk about money?
No, I don't think they talk about money. I think they don't for a couple of reasons. One, because a lot of people honestly don't have any. and they've been trained, and I mean that, and I don't mean that in a mean, ugly way, but like they just, like many people just live paycheck to paycheck, and they don't
Yeah.
never learn how to actually build wealth and hold on to it, whatever that is. That doesn't mean, centimillionaire or decamillionaire, or even, it just means, having more than you spend. Like that's a sense of wealth, right? Like you have more than enough, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. And I think the other part is because what was modeled for people. You don't talk about religion, sex, and money, right? That's the three things in non-cocktail discussions. But those of us, and I don't know how many of your listeners and clients are in business, that's the entire conversation about business. Not the entire, but the end result is to create a profit, which is money. So the only way you're going to do good in business, you got to talk about money. Like,
Yeah.
are we making it? Are we not? Are we profitable enough? Are we not? And be able to do that in a way that, is just kind of matter of fact. It's not a reflection on you. It is just what it is. And that's a whole nother discussion about businesses being reflections of the owners and what they think the business does or doesn't do and how they feel about it. We'll save that for a different call. But in the sense of this specific example, you have to be okay talking about it. You can't not, because that is numbers, and finance and accounting is the language of business. That's how you communicate. We did a good job. We hit our numbers. That's what they say. Did we hit our numbers or did we not hit our numbers? So I think that's why. I think it's conditioning. And I think too that people actually kind of embarrassed about their situation.
I think it works both ways, right? I think people are embarrassed if they don't have money. And I think some
Yes,
people have been, I have, have had friends that are embarrassed because of the amount of money they have, right? It's just like,
true.
um, and there's just, if you were to throw trees instead of, if we were to have a podcast over trees, right? It's like, it's a neutral topic, right? It's like there's no energy, emotional charge to it, but you throw the word
Right.
money into it and we all get squirrely around it. Um, and so I think it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
but yeah, I think, but a large part. I mean, I'm theorizing at this point. I think to a certain degree, from years ago, like even back to the feudal ages, who had the money? It was the landowners
Yeah.
and the lords, and then all the peasants worked. Okay, and so then it, as civilization developed, it moved away to that into more cities and the Renaissance. And I probably don't have all the details right, but more people, you started having merchants, and merchants had money, right? But merchants were not the same thing as a lord. You could be a merchant, but you weren't a lord, right? And I think that there was this built-in worth of a human is defined by where they live in the world of other humans. Meaning, if you're a lord, you're better than a peasant, right? If you're a king, you're better than a lord. And the association oftentimes was those that had money were of higher standing than those that don't. And so I think that, again, philosophical debate, I think that probably does play into things over generations. Oh no, we don't talk about it, because if we talk about it, then they know we are rich, and we don't want anybody to know we're rich, because then they're going to come get us, right, with the pitchforks. Or no, we don't want anybody to know we don't have money, because if they know we don't have money, then they're not going to treat us like we do, because we don't. So I don't know. I think a large portion of it is tied to identity and worth more than just a tool, right?
For sure. I think it's all about like actual safety, right? Like
Yeah.
safety, not that money gives us safety, but like when we are safe to be who we are, when we are um when we believe we deserve it, when we're worthy, and when we're
The money,
lovable.
it's yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. The money itself doesn't, but the money can buy a lot of things that make us feel safe. Going back to my analogy, if you've got um, a king's ransom, and you can pay for the army and the castle and the moat and all the protection, you can hunk down inside and feel pretty safe, right? And we do the same thing in these day and times. We just do it in different ways. We still spend money on things that make us feel protected or isolated or away from or whatever. Um, the money itself, you're right. The money sitting in the bank account does not make me feel more or less safe.
Yeah.
But money can buy the number one rated safety car, right? Or
Oh,
a
can we get into
bodyguard.
this? Can we get into this? Because I'm like,
Sure.
really though, does it like, I think that's just an illusion because you think you're buying a safety car, but you have no control over like I mean, I know we're
Huh,
just like talking about this,
right.
but I think this is, I always think it's so fascinating, like with gated communities. And I'm like, it's so fascinating to me. Like we like build ourselves these little like, same way you're talking about, right? Like back in the,
Right.
I
These
don't even
little
know what
insular areas that nobody
it's,
can get into. But if somebody really wanted to get in, they're coming in. They'll take the Brinks armored truck and smash it down and just drives through your front door. Yes, they can
yeah.
absolutely do that.
Yeah. Or, like you just said, like with safe cars, like we think, oh, we can get this and this will help us be safe, right? But what we
Yeah.
really are saying, like at the root of it, what we're really saying is, can we feel, are we willing to feel any emotion that's going to come up? Because that's what we're really trying to
Right.
run from, right? Like
Yep.
if we have a
Agreed.
safe car, then maybe our kid won't get as injured, which then we won't feel XYZ, right? Versus like I think the root is like safety within that, like no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to be
Yeah.
okay to feel whatever emotion.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
I just think that money has become, like I already said, with the grades, and I think it's
Yeah.
a way for us to feel good about ourselves versus
It's a
doing that
storekeeper for
internal,
sure.
yeah, doing that internal work, right?
Right. But internal work's hard. Who wants to do things hard?
But I think that you're doing hard anyway, right? It's hard
Yeah.
to be constantly chasing after that dollar figure and to never feel fulfilled. It's hard to feel inadequate and that nothing outside of you is going to make you feel that joy and fulfillment within. And I mean, for those of you that have listened long enough, you know that, like, listen, it's not fucking rainbows and daisies every fucking day, right? Like, we all feel our feelings. And also, like, what is your general state of being? Um, I feel like it feels a lot fucking better to feel like I love myself and deserve and am worthy than
Of
it does to
course.
feel inadequate,
Of course. Of course. And the irony of it all is that, and you know this, and I think you're actually better at this than I am. I think you've done your work. I've done my work. I um, still have some things to refine. But the irony is when you actually feel better about yourself, when you stop trying to make everything else make you feel better, you actually end up doing better and being better and all the things. It's not the outside in, it's the inside out.
I wrote this down before we started. I think what we're going for is freedom. And we think, I wrote down financial freedom versus financial ease, but I'm going to take it a little bit further, is really what we want is freedom from our beliefs, right? We want to be free to be who we are, however we are, which, here we go, comes back to safety and love for ourselves, right? But the I think it comes back to lovability too, like, right? Like when you love yourself so much that you're not willing to compromise whatever it is, right? Like when you're willing to say
Yep.
no, right? Um, when people are disappointed in you, when people are, yeah, upset. I mean, that's a whole nother emotional topic, but I think, I used to always think I wanted financial freedom, but what I realized is I wanted financial ease and I wanted freedom from my beliefs, right? Because once
Right.
you are, and obviously I still have, I mean, work in progress, right? Like blips there's those times where it still kind of comes up, which I think is like that memorized response within the body of like what you're used to feeling versus what your new normal is. But, you know, having that, having that financial ease and that freedom to be who we were sent here to be and love ourselves, that's the money right there. That's the
I
money.
agree. I agree. No, I mean, that's what we're saying is that when you finally are in touch with who you are and what makes you happy, and I was alluding to this earlier because I'm again learning it. I've had this experience before. And I think I lost touch with it. And now that I'm doing it again, I'm like, wait a second. This is really good. I'm doing what I want to do. I'm doing what makes me happy, what I feel inspired by, and
Mhm.
things are following that inspiration. And that's really good. That's a good place to be. I'm not chasing, right? And then, back to the energetic verb, you're not chasing, you're attracting because
Yeah.
things come because you're in alignment with it, and it's good. So, I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. Like I have always, as I told you, we use the lion analogy, but I've always gotten up in the morning and run. It's time to run. Like there's no time to when the lion's chasing you. There's no time to sit and admire the sun and the sunrise and a cup of coffee. You gotta freaking run. The lion's coming. And so I started taking time now to like really center myself in the morning. And it's made a big difference on how my day goes. Previous to, and I hate the idea of a morning routine. You do these three things in a row and like you do this and dot that I and then like it's supposed to a certain way and then you got it.
I'm like, no, no routine.
No, no routine. I hate routines. And so, but taking some time and checking in with myself and appreciating like where I am now, the balcony looks over the bay between here and Miami and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's absolutely gorgeous. And you said I sat out there this morning just having coffee and um enjoying the time, and it puts a very different energy about the day as opposed to rush, 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 rush. So um I think I'm saying that because it's going back to like, really, it is what you say. We have to get ourselves to a place that we're happy. And then everything that we think is going to make us happy, we get as a bonus, not go get everything to make us happy. And then we're going to be happy.
Yeah. What would you tell, or what do you want to tell yourself now?
Tell myself now?
Yeah.
Oh, that you are okay, that you are
Mhm.
enough. I think everybody needs to know that you're okay. Whatever you are, just be okay. It's all right.
Mhm. Mhm.
Nobody, I think, you've seen the movie The Secret, I think.
It's been a long time, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time. There's a scene in there where this one of the, I mean, they paint him as this like crazy haired, wild professor guy. And he's like, you know what? Nobody has a script for how your life's supposed to be. You do whatever you want. Nobody up top or wherever said this is how your life is going to work out. And everybody thinks it has to be a certain. So go do what makes. That was the same message. It was like go do what makes you happy. Be happy.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a good reminder.
Yeah. I always
So.
say nobody's getting anywhere with the like, I struggled the most trophy. We might as well have some fun, right? Like
Isn't that true?
there is no struggle bus award. So,
Nope. I've struggled
okay.
the hardest.
I think that just
I'm
goes
saying like
back to,
people. I think people are like,
yeah.
yeah, I've struggled. I've
Yeah.
struggled so hard. Look at me.
Yeah, because I think
I
it
know.
like,
I get
yeah.
stuck in that at times. I know.
Do you really?
At times. At times. I think part of my brain likes solving problems, and so therefore sometimes I create problems where there shouldn't be any problems, so I can solve one. Because, as you know, a quiet mind is actually kind of hard and scary at times.
Yeah.
When your mind's like, oh, what am I supposed to do now? I'm not thinking about anything. Nothing's going on. I think what's his name, Brian Tracy. I learned from him, and I've done it a couple of times. I probably should do it more. He's like the hardest thing in life to do is sit still and do not talk, and do not do anything. Just sit in a chair and don't move for 15 minutes, and just let your mind be. And he said that's the hardest freaking thing, and it is hard because you all over the place.
I think I mean, that for me, like taking the time off when I removed all the band-aids, like that's where it's like, I think the workaholism for people is it prevents that, right? That busyness, that going, 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 because we don't have to hear the voices in our head. But when we get
Yep.
good at like the voices can be there and we don't have to believe them and it's
Correct.
okay,
Yes.
you know? But I think it's a
So
practice
thank you.
like
Thank you
anything
for your
else.
opinion.
But yeah, I mean, if you really look at
No,
it,
no,
like,
I'm saying like to yourself. You're like, oh,
yes,
thank you for your opinion.
yes,
But
that's what I'm
yeah,
saying. Yes, I'm saying yes. Yes, absolutely. When you look at it in that way, it's like it's doing what it's supposed to do, right?
of
It
course,
is literally trying to solve problems because
protect
that's what it
us.
does. Yeah, and it's
Right.
okay. And yeah, It's not a problem. And it's boring, right? And that's the other thing. It's like, it's really boring. I'm sure you're probably have the boring thoughts that keep coming up over and over and over again. Mine
Yeah,
have
but
boring thoughts.
I found, I'm laughing because, how many times has dad told mom, you need a hobby. And she said, my hobby is you. And he's like, I want to be your hobby. Go find a hobby. But I'm saying that because for the longest time, I didn't have any hobbies. And then as I
Mhm.
started playing tennis more, I'm like, oh, I can go have enjoyment or climbing mountains or, doing whatever things I enjoy. Okay, I can find things and places to do and be that make me happy. And I think that diverts a lot of that energy that creates issues for AI.
I think it's uh, you didn't you didn't say this, but it's almost like business. If you're not mindful of it, it's like the the thing to do versus the thing to be. Like heart's desire. Like if you're coming at it from like I want to
Yes.
create because right versus business can also be well, I don't mean hobby. We don't want it a hobby, but you know what I mean. Like it can be fun. It can be another form of play.
Yes. It doesn't have to be work.
Yeah, we have pushed ourselves into that way from where we are coming from. And also
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's more and how much more creative are you when you get to go play, when you get to do tennis, when you get to do things you love
100%.
because you have so much space for your brain to think and create and all the things. So,
Hmm.
okay. Anything else?
Thanks for having me on as your guest. Hopefully, I was a good guest.
Everyone's a good guest. I love you.
I love you too, Aaron.